Alright, Team Sound. When we last left off in AutoCAD, I had you draw 3 types of symbols for your line diagrams. We did not officially put them into use. Here's why. We are going to turn them into configurable blocks. A block in AutoCAD is a grouped set of objects that you can save and reinsert over and over. It is the Vectorworks equivalent of a symbol. Let's say I take this mic symbol that I drew earlier and use the command B spacebar for block. I can group these together. You may also see me use the command bmake, because that's what it was when I learned AutoCAD back in the ancient times. Apparently now it's just B, because we don't have time for more letters, and that's fine. Better for you to learn it as B and watch me do it the old person way. Anyhow, this series of lines and circle and text is locked into place, and it can be easily copy-pasted. But there's one problem with that. I would want to change the text to reflect different types of microphones. There is a way to do that, of course. Let's break this block apart and start over. The command for that is X spacebar for explode. In order to make these text boxes configurable, we will want to replace the text with attributes. The command to create an attribute is ATTDEF spacebar for attribute define. It will bring up the attribute definition window. You will have to fill out some form fields. For tag, I am going to put M $. This is going to be for the microphone count number at the center of the circle. For prompt, I am going to put mic number. For default, I am going to choose 0, 0. For text style, I am going to select my line diagram text style that I created previously. As a reminder, it is Arial font at 1-inch text height. I am going to justify this text attribute to middle center and leave the rest as is. Press save. I'm left with a single line of text that says M $. Going to delete my plain text and replace it with this new attribute in the center of the circle. We have 2 more attributes, however, before we should redefine our block. Purpose and make and model. Let's do purpose first. @def spacebar. Tag is microphone purpose. The prompt is microphone purpose, and the default is also microphone purpose. I don't care that they're the same thing. Doesn't bother me. You can call it what you want. I am going to want to justify this one to middle right and save. We have an error this time, however, because the tag isn't allowed to have spaces. That is an easy enough fix. Just go back in and add an underscore in between mic and purpose. Alright, drop that anywhere. Let's make another attribute for make and model. @def spacebar. Tag is microphone underscore make underscore model. Prompt is microphone make / model. And the default is microphone make / model. I'm going to justify that to middle right. Save and drop that anywhere. Going to delete my plain text field here. Don't need it anymore. I'm going to offset my vertical mic line by 1 inch to give myself the same spacing as before. The USITT Sound Graphics Standards indicates that purpose should be on top and make and model should be on bottom. I honestly mix these up frequently, but let's follow the convention. I'm going to drag purpose by the middle right anchor onto my reference line and drop it onto the midpoint of that line. Using the move command, I'm going to move it up by 1 inch. M spacebar, drag cursor up, 1 spacebar. Same thing for make and model, except opposite direction. Center at the midpoint of the reference line, and move down. M spacebar, drag down, 1 spacebar. And I can delete that reference line now. I am left with 3 configurable tags, so now we can make this into a block. Make a bounding box to select all these objects, and B spacebar. The block name will be mic symbol. Something important to do is pick a base point. It will default to the 0, 0 point of this drawing, which we don't want. So I'm going to click Pick Point, and for this one I'm going to choose the right quadrant of the circle. That will be my main anchor point for every new instance of this block. Everything else is fine, so I'm going to create block. The prompts will come up asking you what you want the text to say for your very first instance of this block. I'm just going to leave the default and click confirm. Can copy paste it and it will all be connected in the same exact way. But now when I double click on it, I get this window where I can change the text fields. Let's call this mic 1 and it will be for flugelhorn, and the mic will be a Sennheiser MD421. I can copy paste this again and again, and the geometry and spacing will be retained, but I can change the text for a different microphone. An alternative to copy and pasting is the insert command, I spacebar. It will open up a blocks menu on the right with little mini icon versions of all the blocks in my drawings. Some of the temporary ones that I was working on earlier are still here, though I don't need them anymore. Anyway, I'm going to double click the microphone symbol because that's the good one. It will ask me the relevant prompts once I click in model space. I will make this microphone 2. It will be a cello and the mic will be a DPA 4099. So I have some extra blocks here that are temporary and I don't want them anymore. Something I like to do semi-frequently to keep my drawing clean is use the Purge command. Spelled exactly like that. Purge spacebar. I leave everything checked in the Purge window and let it rip. It will remove everything that isn't present in my drawing anymore. So all my temporary things, my mistakes, and remnants of old things, especially when you're working with others and they have their old blocks that you don't need, that will be gone. I'm going to blow through this same process for the speaker block. Going to redefine some attributes and replace the plain text. @def. Tag is S $. Prompt speaker number. Default 00, justify to middle center. Save. Delete the text and replace. @def. Speaker _ purpose. Speaker purpose and speaker purpose. Justify this one middle left and save. @def. Speaker _ make _ model. Speaker make / model and speaker make / model. Justify middle left. Delete the plain text. Offset a reference line by 1 inch. Center the top text. Move up by 1. Center the bottom text. Move down by 1. Delete my offset reference. Bounding box select and bmake. Gonna call this my speaker symbol. Pick my base point. I'm gonna put the base on the left side centered. Confirm all the defaults and we have a block. Gonna take it for a spin. Speaker 1 main left. Going to make it a Meyer UPA 1P. Thing about the Meyer line though, this is an active speaker, and it needs the extra triangle in the symbol. We could go about this in a couple ways. We could create 2 different blocks, an active speaker symbol and a passive speaker symbol. You could also just leave the symbol passive by default and draw in the lines manually. Here's the fancy option though, adding a visibility state. Let's say I like the block for the most part. I don't want to explode it and start over, I just want to tweak it. You'll want the block edit command or bedit spacebar. The block editor window will take you out of model space and give you this gray background. We're looking at our speaker symbol. We can now change the lines around and change the text scale and just resave. But we are actually here to add in a visibility state. Click up here where it says add visibility. The first question it will ask you is, where do you want your parameter location? That's going to be where your toggle lives. It will make more sense once the block is finished, so I'm just going to put it here on the top left corner. Question is next, how many grips? And just say 1. That adds this little arrow thing, more on that a bit later. Now, on this little drop-down, we have a new visibility state. Let's go into the drop-down to Visibility State Manager. I'm going to rename Visibility State 0 to Passive. And I'm going to add another one and call it Active. So now you have two alternatives, Active State and Passive State. I am going to make sure I am in Active State and draw in my 2 extra lines. Let's toggle back into passive mode and make sure that took. Yippee, it seems to be. So let's click Save and go back into Model Space by clicking the X. My block in Model Space is in passive mode. To toggle to active mode, click on the little blue arrow and switch over. And hey, look, our lines are back. That is what the parameter location prompt was about before. Where do you want your toggle to live? I chose the top left corner. You can go back into Bedit and move it somewhere else. So, copy paste. I'm going to make another block instance. It's main right, and I'm going to make it a D&B Audio-Technica E12, which is a passive speaker because it requires an amplifier to run. Note for the pedantic, I wouldn't want to make a main left and main right speaker 2 different models, but this is about drafting and it isn't real. Okay, we've got our input side and the output side. And in between, we need our device blocks. I have a Crown XTI 2000 amplifier drawn from the last video. Going to make that a 2-channel amp block. Amplifiers tend to come in 2-channel models and 4-channel models. So I'm just going to turn this into a standard-sized amp block. Now, in this case, not every piece of text in this symbol is going to need to be adaptable. I can actually leave 2-channel amplifier as is and leave inputs and outputs where they are. Up top, I will want an attribute for make and model, and the channel labels will also want to be changeable. Sometimes they're 1 and 2, sometimes they're A and B. It depends on the amp. So, @def spacebar, amplifier underscore, make underscore model, amplifier make/model, amplifier make/model. Justify that to bottom center. Save and drop it anywhere. I'm gonna delete the static text and replace it with my attribute. I'm going to blow through these next 4, 1 attribute per in and out. Delete the reference lines. I'm going to select all of these and make it a block with B spacebar. I'm going to call it Amplifier Device Block and anchor it to top center. The thing I said earlier about wanting matching main speaker models stands, so I'm going to delete my Meyer UPA1P and copy paste my E12. Going to change the E12 to main left and make it speaker 1. D&B Audio-Technica is a brand that really pushes you to use their specific amplifiers with their specific lines of speakers. So this amplifier is going to be a D&B Audio-Technica D12. Next up, how would we connect this amp to these speakers? A single line between the two would suffice, but we're going to be extra here and make a line block with attributes for our connectors on both sides, because I want you to be able to say what specific cable you need and what gender goes to which side. So make a 20-inch line. We're going to make an attribute for left and right connectors. The tag is going to be either left or right. The prompt can be left connector or right connector. And you can leave the default blank. Justify it to bottom left or bottom right. Anchor them to the top ends and move them inwards by 1. I'm going to want to make the text size a bit smaller on these. So I'm going to select both attributes, and in the properties window, I'm going to scroll down to text height and make these 0.75 instead of 1. Make this whole thing a block called cable. I'm going to make my base point the left side of the line. And these are both NL2 ends. I consider them male ends because a plug is male in my head, but I believe that Neutrik considers them female by the product codes. It is up for debate, I suppose, so in the spirit of being gender neutral, let's just call them NL2s. So I'm going to line these up here, connect my amp to my speakers. We have a DMB amp connected via speak-on cable into some DNB speakers. I can copy-paste those NL2s and move them to the input side and change them to XLRs. Male ends go into the amp inputs. Females come out of the console or the DSP or whatever else you have in between. Could be a 1/4-inch TRS male, but let's say they are XLR female. And here's where things can deviate. Let's say we've just got a sound console here for simplicity. How tall this device block would need to be is going to depend on what's coming in and what's going out. Over the years, I have tried a couple different things to streamline. I have built blocks for different sizes. It worked sometimes. I've made dynamic blocks that I could resize the length of. That sort of worked, but it was kind of annoying to keep track of and harder to make and maintain. Ultimately, what am I doing these days? There are some blocks that are static, like my amps and speakers. The console and stage boxes, I draw those manually because the spacing changes so much. Here's what I'm going to have you guys try out. Let's make the device blocks with just the header, and from there you can figure out your own clever methodology that works for you. I am going to show you one more dynamic block characteristic called stretch, and you can choose to use it in your workflow if you end up liking it. So I'm going to take my device block that I've already drawn, and let's do an attribute up top for the make and model. Default, I'm going to leave blank. Justify it to bottom center. Delete the static text and replace. At def, device underscore type, device type, default blank, justify middle center, delete the static text, add a reference line from corner to corner, center the anchor on the middle of that reference line. At def, inputs, and leave default blank, justify it middle left. I'm going to make a reference line exactly where my static text for inputs is. Delete the static one and replace it with the attribute. Same thing with the other side. At def, outputs, and default blank. Justify middle right. Add a temp line at the anchor point that I want to match. Swap the text with the attribute. At def, L, left label. Default blank. Justify middle left. Add a temp line at the anchor point that I want to match. Swap the text out. At def, R, right label, default blank. Justify middle right. Temp line, replace text with attribute. That's all the attributes up top. Make it a block. I'm going to call it device block. My base point will be the top center line. Let's go into the Bedit window, Bedit spacebar. So how tall this thing wants to be depends on what kind of equipment it is and what you're doing with it. So we're going to make the bottom line stretchy with one more dynamic setting. It requires us to set a parameter first. The one we want is a linear parameter. From here to here in the middle. It doesn't stretch yet. We will want to then add a second thing called an action. We want stretch. I'm going to click on stretch, apply it to my linear parameter by clicking on it. It will then ask me a series of questions. Going to click on the bottom arrow. That's where I want it to stretch. I will leave the top one alone. Going to make two bounding box windows, stretch frame and object selection, as in I want to stretch down here and I want it to move just these 3 lines. Hit done. Let's take it for a spin, save that, go into model space with the X. Now I've got that arrow, and it works. Now I'm left with this movable rectangle. It can be a console, or a stage box, or a phone, a DSP, a direct box. It'll be the same width as every other device block. And what goes in and out is up to the needs of the drawing from here. Let's make this a sound console. Let's pretend it's the DM7. Device type is digital sound console. Make and model is going to be the Yamaha DM7. I do want the input and output labels, so I'm going to add that in. Sometimes you may want them, sometimes you won't. I'm going to line this console up to my amp with polar tracking. For your input and output labels, you can just use plain text or make a left side attribute block and a right side attribute block. That way you have text that stays consistent with spacing, easy enough to copy, paste, and edit. Let's add a laptop to show another device block. Going to copy paste the device block off of my console. Change the labels. Going to make this an Apple MacBook Pro. Call it a laptop. Remove the inputs label and leave output. This is just for a headphone jack and for some theoretical test music. 1/8 inch TRS female. Going to steal the cables off these two microphones up here because they are nicely spaced already. Change one of these from XLR female to 1/8 inch TRS male. The other ends can remain XLR male. A new command that I am going to show you now is burst. It is an alternate version of the explode command that we used earlier to break apart our block. Here's the difference between burst and explode. Burst will flatten your attributes into plain text. Explode will break them back down into attributes. I want to keep the text XLR male, so I am just going to use burst spacebar. If you double click after burst, it is now plain text. I'm going to delete XLRF from the other side. From the midpoint of the 1/8 inch cable above, I'm going to join these two lines with a vertical and use the trim command to shorten the left side. What I am depicting here is an 1/8 inch TRS to dual male XLR cable. 2 input sockets, 1 output. Going into input 3 and input 4 of the console. So how do we space these vertically so it feels clean and even? There is another one of those. Depends on what you're doing. Whenever I manage to develop a convention, I end up having to break it because my system gets too complicated. I have some blocks in my personal workflow that I call spacers. When I want things to space out a certain way, like the distance between these microphones, for example, I will create a rectangle and fill it in with an obnoxious color and make that a block. Let's make one of those. Make a rectangle from here to here, drag it away. I'm going to fill it with the BH command. That stands for boundary hatch. It defaults to a hatched fill, but I want a solid fill personally, so I'm going to click up here and select solids. I like that fine enough, and I'm going to click X. It's a bit bright, and this is a personal preference. I'm going to make this fill semi-transparent. Click on the fill, and the transparency option will show up on the right properties window. Going to set it to, 80 something. It doesn't really matter. Going to turn that into a block. B spacebar. Call it mic spacer. Make the base anchor top left. And I'm left with this semi-transparent rectangle. I promised myself an obnoxious color, so I'm going to make a new layer for just my spacer blocks. Right-click on the 0 layer and on the drop-down, click New Layer. Going to name this one Spacers and make it green. I can click on my white spacer on the 0 layer and move it to the green layer over here. And now I can copy paste these things to make sure I'm lined up in a way that is even. I can toggle the layer on and off as desired. You can turn off the layer visibility when you want to print, but just in case, you can also turn it to don't print this layer mode. By default, you don't see this mode in your layers window, so right-click up here on the layers bar. You will see additional toggles that are not on by default. Activate the plot toggle. It will add this little printer icon on the spacers layer. Click the plot toggle and the no printer icon will appear. So even if I left this on while exporting to PDF later, anything existing on this layer will just refuse to print, which is what I want. Let's say I like the line diagram. I've checked it twice, everything seems accurate, and I want to print. Okay, how do I do that? It's time to go over to Paperspace. Click on Layout 1. We will start with a regular piece of printer paper, which is fine for small line diagrams and drawings I expect to share with anyone who might not have access or care about large format plotting. Anyhow, we can stick to 8.5 by 11 for now. I'm going to open up a separate drawing that has a title block in it. This is the DePaul-styled title block I would like you to use for class. It is a copy of the scenic title block, except I have changed the fields to be more sound-focused and reduced the paper size. When you double-click on this title block, you will be able to fill out the attributes. That's what this title block is, a series of attributes, just like our device blocks. I have written a big note in model space about relevant page settings related to this specific title block. Let's copy-paste this block over to our line diagram. I'm going to drop it into Paperspace and put it anywhere. This anchor at the bottom is meant to line the title up blocked to the 0, 0 coordinate. So I'm going to click on that anchor and move it to 0, 0. M spacebar, 0, 0, spacebar. And it should move to 0, 0, but it still looks messed up. That's because my page settings haven't been adjusted yet. So I'm going to go to File, Page Setup Manager. Select Layout 1 and click the little gear icon for Settings. I'm going to drop down to Edit. Remember my big note in model space on the other DWG file. I'm going to change those settings to match up. The big ones is my printer wants to be AutoCAD PDF. My paper size wants to be ANSI Expand A. And the paper size will adjust in a way that the block makes much more sense. So what's this green box in the center? That is called the model view. Let's just delete it and start fresh. Make sure that I'm on a different layer. You can draw this one on Titleblock. Double-click to make Titleblock layer current. To create a new model view, I'm going to use the command MV spacebar. Going to click within the bounds of my title block. It's going to give me a zoom extents version of my drawing with all the chicken scratch on the side. So I'm going to double click on the model view and zoom in on the relevant portion of the drawing with zoom objects. Z spacebar, O spacebar, bounding box to select, spacebar. And there's our line diagram looking spiffy. Do not forget to change relevant title block fields, like your name, for example, and the date. If you want to add in the TTS logo, that file is also included on D2L. XREF, spacebar. This will open up the reference manager. The link to the picture is broken, so I'm going to right-click on the TTS logo and click Select New Path. Find the image file and relink it, and it will look like the title block should. Or you can change the picture to something funny. Just don't do anything vulgar, please. This is a Christian university. Lowkenuinely, don't get me in trouble. You can go to File, Print, Save PDF. So let's find our PDF and open it and check for spelling errors. If it looks real, turn it into D2L. If it doesn't, fix it until it looks accurate. Okay, your homework is to make your mic symbol and your speaker symbol into blocks and make a device block and a block for cables and connectors. Basically, do the things I showed you in this video and probably also in class. What do you do with the blocks? Make a line diagram based on your Class 3 assignment. the 3 mics and the laptop or phone into the M7, outputting to the 2 active speakers. That will be your first line diagram. Simple system, the one you have to assemble in real life and do workbook pages about. All right, go team. Yo, this one goes out to Tech 209, 2026. All right, here we go now. This is a song about drafting in AutoCAD. This video's so late it makes me feel real bad. D2L backlog be like a bloodbath. 10 out of 10, don't know when I'm gonna clear the aftermath. Gotta draft that mic block, speaker block, unlock, device block, round the clock, connect them with that cable stock. Cause once you make them, you take them and copy paste them, rearrange them, change the labels to help you figure out the cables. I wrote this instead of going to sleep. So much cringe makes you wanna weep in too deep, but take the leap. Gotta keep spitting out these rounds like a trash heap, cause these laughs are really cheap. Try it out, get an A, or email me yesterday, ask what the video is like.
I don't understand anything you say.
You gotta do this cause I make you draw the lines until they break you, but I hope you have a breakthrough. Boo, that was stupid. Bring back Stephanie Farina's class.